Hi, I'm Robert Harley, editor of the Absolute Sound magazine. We're here in my listening room with Jim Shannon from Germany's T+A, a loudspeaker and electronics manufacturer. And we have the brand new Solitaire S540 loudspeaker that I'm reviewing soon. So I'd like to talk to Jim about some of the design elements of it. As you can see, it's an unusual design. It's not woofer mid-range tweeter cone drivers in a box. It's a very unusual design that's very purpose-built and has a long history behind it, why it's designed this way. So Jim, why don't you start with a little bit about the history of T+A?
T+A is now in our 45th year of business, started in 1978 by Siegfried Amft, who was a gentleman who always had a very serious interest in music, including playing violin as a young man, loving rock and roll, which always came by his area because of some of the NATO troops that were stationed there after the Second War. And Siggy wanted to be an engineer, first and foremost. And he studied at one of the best engineering schools in Germany, in Hanover. And he had the very, very good fortune, maybe serendipitous, to actually study with a gentleman named Dr. Fritz Sennheiser, who most of us know from his company in the world of audio, which has been in business for even longer. And Dr. Sennheiser had been teaching in the physics department, as well as running his company at that time. And Mr. Amft, Siggy as he likes to be called, wanted to learn from him and had the good fortune of being able to use him as somewhat of a mentor. Dr. Sennheiser really encouraged Siggy to get into the audio business, which was booming and really something interesting at that time. And Siggy decided after he graduated with an advanced degree in plasma physics, he wanted to get involved with audio. But he was a relatively poor fellow, just paid for some of his school and didn't have a lot of money, so the lowest cost of entry was speakers. You could build speakers by finding good cabinet makers, finding drivers, developing crossover techniques. And although Siggy's ultimate goal was to create full system solutions, speakers was the lowest cost of entry. And so he began designing speakers. And for a lot of good reasons, including the fact that he was a very good designer from the get-go, he started to sell them very successfully. So T+A, now known largely for electronics, started as a speaker company, continues to be a speaker company, and continues to create very serious innovations in all elements of speaker design. So what Robert is listening to now is our most recent reference speaker that comes from a long line of speakers, some of which had some similar design elements, but all of which have been refined quite a bit in this most recent version. So that's the briefest background I can give you. One thing that I would say is important early on, T+A, our engineering team felt that the best design for high frequencies in a loudspeaker would be an electrostatic tweeter. And starting nearly 30 years ago, T+A began to build speakers with electrostatic tweeters of different designs over time that continued to be refined. And those tweeters really did perform in the way that we felt they should. They provided a very, very wide frequency response, great dynamics, incredible speed, and they really were the foundation. I would call it the grandfather of this speaker. And the reason is this speaker does not have an electrostatic tweeter, but it has one that's very, very closely aligned with electrostatics. And I should explain why we stopped making electrostatics. Like many companies who built electrostatic speaker designs, when you start selling worldwide, which we very fortunately have been able to do over the last 25 years or so, we get our speakers involved in listening rooms and sound systems that are in very hot, very humid climates. And our speakers sounded great, worked great, but over time we found that the humidity and the heat created a type of voltage jumping across from the stators right through the electrostatic element, creating holes in the tweeter, which made it not perform the way it should. So electrostatic tweeters perform very well in most of the world, but in certain countries where the heat and humidity became so high, we realized we couldn't sell them there. And as an aside, we were selling a lot of them there, so we had to come up with a solution, and our engineers got working on this. One of the most serendipitous aspects of this tweeter design is it's very closely related to headphone designs that we began to work to create about 5 years ago. And our headphone designs use a planar magnetic design that does not require the high voltages of electrostatics, but required some very careful materials, spraying with a magnetic material in a very precise fashion, and the design of some new magnet assemblies that would make all of the electronic force across the tweeter design to be absolutely consistent through the entire area. And that headphone design gave our engineers some really good ideas about what might work in the place of an electrostatic tweeter, and hence we have a very similar design now with very, very high quality, very precise magnetic arrays that allow it to be moving very precisely, very fast, very dynamically, with very high power capability, but without the problems of electrostatics.
Just a brief interruption, esteemed viewers. As you may know, I'm Tom Martin, Chief Content Officer of The Absolute Sound. We have a new product. It's on the Substack platform, and we're going to do some interesting things with Substack. First of which is reader questions and answers. Each Monday, readers will submit questions. We'll pick the most interesting ones and we'll answer the questions on Friday. We'll also have early access to articles and special blogs that don't appear anywhere else. We hope you'll join us. It's only a cost of a cup of coffee per month. Just check on the screen or in the show notes below. Thanks. And now back to the show.
So this is a three-way system.
Yes.
It has two side-firing 8-inch woofers on each side.
Yes.
For a total of 4. And it has the tweeter
Yes.
that you're talking about, and then an array of mid-range drivers.
Yes.
And the mid-range drivers are unusual. They're oval.
Yes.
They're in waveguides, and they mimic the radiation pattern of the tweeter.
Yes. And they can do that very well, particularly because of the new design of an oval speaker, which allows it to have the central magnetic point much closer to the tweeter than a traditional round driver, which we've used in the past. This gives the entire line array a very consistent radiation pattern, both in the mid-range and the tweeter. And it is a line array, so it is specifically designed not to radiate above the listening position or below the listening position, but really directed at the listener. This speaker and its smaller brother are both designed for critical listening, not for background listening. If you stand up, you will notice that a lot of the information gets lost right away, but that's by design, so it doesn't reflect off the ceiling. And the waveguides around both the tweeter and these mid-ranges also address the first reflection in a way that we're really controlling that first reflection so that virtually all the energy goes directly toward the listening position with very little above and beyond. And the sides are reduced in amplitude by a considerable amount as well.
So it reduces the amount of room reflections that the listener hears.
Yes.
So he hears more direct sound from the speaker and less of the room's deleterious influence.
Absolutely correct. The woofers are placed in such a way that they can contribute to what we call a cylindrical waveform. And because they're right opposite each other on both sides of the cabinet, we can brace them together using a very substantial steel set of rods so that each one of the woofers has several rods connecting directly to the woofer on the other side. And that means because they're playing in the same phase at the same time, all of the energy goes into the room and none of the energy stays within the chassis of the woofer or the box. If you play a very serious and heavy bass piece of music, you can touch the cabinet while it's playing and feel virtually no vibration whatsoever. All of the bass energy is going into the room.
I was surprised to learn that the tweeter is crossed over at 1800 hertz, which is a very low frequency.
Yes.
So almost all the mid-range and all the treble is reproduced by this transducer.
Correct. Correct. And that means what you get is incredible coherence. Even the mid-range aspects that are delivered by the tweeter are faster in terms of they can stop and start much faster. The precision of imaging and placement of the musicians in any given musical performance is absolutely the best we've been able to deliver and the best we've heard. So it's a very important part of having a tweeter that can play over such a wide bandwidth with such power and such precision and such speed. The tweeter is really, some might say, the heart of this loudspeaker.
And it also gets the crossover out of the critical mid-range, like instead of like 2.5 or 3 kilohertz.
Correct.
Where it typically is at 1.8 kilohertz. So you've got that whole mid-range on up that's coherent.
Yeah, we really know how much, when there is a crossover, a voice is being crossed over, let's say, from the lowest register of the voice to the higher overtone structures. We know that your ear immediately recognizes that, and so you're absolutely right. This minimizes that effect and allows absolute purity of mid-range without any of the deleterious effects of crossover.
I was at Expona and I heard Siggy give a presentation on this speaker, and I really got the feeling that this was like his life's project. This was near and dear to his heart, that he'd wanted to do this for a long time.
Yes.
But he'd been busy running the company, and now his son
Yes.
takes over the management, and he's returned to his first love of loudspeaker design, and this is a real labor of love for him. I got that impression from the way he talked about it, like it was his child.
You heard it correctly. Siggy has always been a speaker designer by nature. And one of the great things that's happening with T+A right now is Conradine Ampt joined the company 5 years ago after finishing his education, including a master's degree in business administration. So he is kind of the complementary business side to his father. And he's absolutely interested in making the company a family business for the next 40 years as well. We think that's an important aspect of T+A because, you know, in this world today, you see so many venture capital companies buying excellent brands in audio with goals that may or may not be consistent with a family-owned business. A family-owned business needs to think long-term, needs to invest in building our own products with our own designs, not just repackaging somebody else's design, and creating enough value that over the long run, there's something that customers are going to appreciate, that our dealers, that our partners in business will appreciate. They want to be treated like family, and a family business will do that, I would argue, a little bit better than most venture capital businesses would. And it's part of the reason why I've enjoyed working for the last 20 years for T+A, because they've treated me like family, and I know that we treat all of our customers the same way.
And there are 3 models in the new Solitaire line. This is the top S540.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the other 2 models.
The other 2 models, the S530 is probably 8 inches shorter, I would say. It has only a single woofer on both sides. And it actually is a vented design, where this is a sealed design. We had enough cabinet space in this particular design for our engineers to feel that a sealed design would work best. But when we got into a slightly smaller cabinet, they felt we would get the best results using a vented design, and that one is a vented design. But it uses the same mid-range array, the same tweeter, 2 woofers instead of 4, and it's a little bit smaller. So it plays in many respects very similarly for a slightly smaller room, where you can try to get as much of this performance as possible.
And this is available in silver, like this model, in black, and there's a wood version?
Yes, they call it Macassar ebony. It looks very much like a striped rosewood is the best way. You can look on our website and see a picture of it. The front baffles are an important part. They are a very thick machined aluminum, and that provides an extremely stable point of reference for both the tweeter and mid-range to operate without any flexing. The front baffle can be either black or silver. The cabinets can be silver, black, or Macassar. So you have several mix and match combinations. The third speaker, the S430, uses a smaller version of this tweeter in a much more traditional design. It's like a Dapolito design with 2 woofers, 2 mid-ranges, and a relatively small tweeter, but the exact same design elements, but more capable of a more traditional room environment, where it's not as much designed to restrict the frequencies. It's designed for much more normal, I guess I would say normal non-audiophile use, but someone who still appreciates the technology and the type of sound that it creates.
All right, well, thanks for all that information. Watch for my review in the next couple of months in the Absolute Sound.
Thank you for your time and attention, Robert. We really appreciate it very much.